Quite an end to quite a night, night 3 at the Democratic National Convention here in Philadelphia. To discuss it all and look ahead to tonight's 4th and final night, we have Democratic strategist Liz Smith, CBSN political contributor, Democratic strategist, former advisor to Tim Kaine, Lynda Tran, who's got a writer in a contract that says her introduction must be the longest. And so Hillary Clinton's senior advisor, Jeremy Bird, we had to reduce it to that just to make sure everybody was good here. Jeremy, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Last night, lots of heavy hitters, and understandably so, when you have a sitting vice president and a sitting president, as well as a VP nominee join us. But as we saw President Obama and Joe Biden, Tim Kaine, they all seem to echo, Liz, the same message. There was something of an alchemy of optimism, of surrogacy for Hillary Clinton, but also last night, very pointedly, yes, Donald Trump in the crosshairs. Collectively, as a message, as the optics of night 3 played out, how impactful?
Very impactful. And, you know, and Jeremy, you will appreciate this because, you know, in 2012 on the Obama campaign, one thing that we did was we kept a wall with all the major papers in the swing states to see how everything was being covered. And I went through, you know, the papers this morning. I was Charlotte Observer, Tampa Bay Times, Denver Post. I keep rattling them off. And to a T, they all led with Democrats, President Obama, Vice President Biden, emphasize optimism, you know, the greatness of America, and how we need to unite behind Hillary Clinton. And that is such a stark contrast to the headlines that we saw coming out of the Republican National Convention, where it was all about doom and gloom and division and booing Ted Cruz, all that. So I always look to the local papers to see how these things are covered, and it was striking how unified the message was across the country.
Lynda, I'm going to ask you to be as objective as you can be. With regard to Tim Kaine, someone that at least 49 of the 50 states did not know, maybe met last night for the first time, asking anyone to follow Joe Biden and lead into President Obama, it's a tough task, especially when nobody does really know who you are. So for the notes he had to hit, including as something of a folksy attack dog, how do you think he did last night?
You know, absolutely true. It's really hard to follow up somebody, especially who's catering to the hometown crowd with Joe Biden, and the crowd roars. And then you know that even though you don't know what the words are going to be, that Barack Obama is going to follow it with something epic. So it's hard to be in the middle. The other thing for Tim Kaine is that part of what his power is when he speaks off the cuff. He's his most natural. He's his most engaging. He's his most real. And so the environment of being in front of a teleprompter, I think, was a little stiffer than you probably would have wanted to get from him. But at the end of the day, for most of the viewers watching at home who had never heard of him before, they got a full taste of his story, understood where he stood on progressive issues, and he was able to get across some very clear lines of attack on Donald Trump, which I think were very effective.
It was something that Hillary Clinton said was the first thing, her most important point in choosing Tim Kaine. He is ready to be president on day one. But in seeing a president speak last night and somebody else who for 8 years has been the man a heartbeat away, did we have a sense last night of a potential President Kaine?
When we say somebody who's ready to be president on day one, it's not about who's behind the microphone so much as it's who understands what it actually takes to lead, especially to lead in difficult times. And what we saw last night, what we got to understand, was Tim Kaine's resume. Here's a guy who was governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia during the worst recession we had seen since the 1930s. And, you know, he was able to tell that story. Really what you want, especially during a time when we know the polls show us people are concerned, even though they like President Obama. And to be clear, he was on the stage not just because he was a sitting president, but because he was a popular sitting president, because we know from past conventions that hasn't always been the case. Even under President Obama's leadership, even under the progress we've made, we know people are concerned. And so what you want to know is that whoever takes the Oval Office next can handle that and has your interests at heart, and he was definitely able to convey that.
Meanwhile, Jeremy, aside from perhaps making a case for his own legacy and his administration's legacy, we did see President Obama staunchly, rousingly as a surrogate for Hillary Clinton last night. And it ended with an optic that a lot of people thought we might see. It came to pass when Hillary Clinton did come out. And it was a it was an embrace. I mean, there was an intimacy to the moment, however scripted. So first, with regard to the president's effectiveness in making the case for the former secretary, how do you think he did?
I think he did a fantastic job. I think he really talked about what really resonated the most to me was the idea of what it takes to be president, right? Not many people know what it's like to sit behind that desk. She is 100% ready to do that. And I thought the line where he said, look, no one's been more qualified. Not me, not Bill Clinton, than Hillary Clinton is. I thought that was incredibly powerful. So I think he made a really strong case. You're going to see him make that same case in battleground states all across the country over the coming weeks.
The bar was certainly raised, Jeremy. I want to ask you about something in USA Today, which has always been a tough part about the title. But they provide a guide to wooing the masses, ostensibly for Hillary Clinton, perhaps to refer to in these final hours. And a part of it reads, and I quote, "In her 5 Democratic speeches, Clinton was promoting someone else. It's possible that, like many women, self-promotion doesn't come easily. This is one big sales presentation," end quote. Again, a 4-day exercise in optics, in crafting a narrative, and with regard to the candidate, perhaps recrafting a narrative about somebody that many people feel they know already. How personal, then, will we hear her be tonight? How much will she be essentially selling herself?
Yeah, I think the big thing, and I think it was in that article, talked about just her being herself, being authentic. There's been 25 years of attacks, and you saw this in the Republican primary on her. And I think it's really important for her to remind the American people who she is as a mother, who she is as a leader, but most importantly, to be herself. And I think you'll see that tonight.
And it's fitting that if she is elected president, she would be a sitting president of the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage. Ladies, when you hear this, essentially, and it's always a very sticky thing to assign gender roles here, but in terms of promotion, certainly of oneself, what do you expect tonight?
Well, I hate making, as you said, sweeping generalizations about women and how they present themselves. But I do think that rings a little bit true. And it's a little funny in an election where she's up against Donald Trump, whose 3 favorite words are me, myself, and I. But I think that we will be able to, she has been getting more comfortable on the stump in recent weeks. And I expect her to be able to make a very fierce case for herself tonight.
All right. Lynda, Liz, you're with us all day, and thankfully so. Jeremy, really appreciate the time this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being
Appreciate
here.
it.